Well, that was a very entertaining road course race. And at Sonoma, of all places. Hey there, race fans. It's Race Day Top 5 with me, Frank 5. Sonoma Raceway, out in the beautiful wine country that is Sonoma, where you get to pick the grapes, you get to be able to make your own wine. It's definitely a very beautiful place out there, but so is Sonoma Raceway. And this weekend, we went left and right, twists and turns all around on a brand new racing surface, and one California kid got another win at his home track. Let's get into all that went down in wine country. Number 1, Larson pulls it off. Kyle Larson scored his third win of this 2024 season, winning yesterday's Toyota Save Mart 350 at Sonoma Raceway. His second win at his home track, beating out Michael McDowell, Chris Buescher, Chase Elliott, and Ross Chastain for the victory. A big win for Kyle Larson and the team, specifically after what happened earlier in the week, as NASCAR announced that they were able to give Kyle Larson a waiver to remain playoff eligible. Of course, you remember a couple weeks ago, he was not able to start the Coke 600 because he was running the Indianapolis 500 that was delayed a couple hours. Larson was able to make it to the racetrack just a couple laps after halfway, but unfortunately at that time the rain came and we never got back going, and Larson could never attempt to run the rest of the race, even though he wasn't going to get points at all because he didn't start the race. He missed out on it, and then we went to Gateway last week, and at the moment he was not playoff eligible. But this week on Tuesday, NASCAR announced that because of Larson's attempt and got to the speedway, even though they were never able to get the race back going, that was enough to give him his waiver to make the playoffs. I know a lot of people are probably like, that's not enough. He should have started the race. He should have skipped down the Indianapolis 500. But no, the attempt to get to Charlotte was enough for NASCAR to say, you are going to still remain playoff eligible. Here is this waiver. Now, down the road, these rules are probably going to change, and maybe they should, but for the moment, Kyle Larson is in the playoffs. And yesterday, he was able to get a few more bonus points to add to his points tally for this season with the win at Sonoma. Now, during the race, Larson was running up inside the top 5, had a very good race car, and he's definitely had some good speed, particularly on the long runs. Had some good battles with Tyler Reddick when they were on differing pit strategies compared to a couple other drivers on the race. They didn't pit until the end of stage number 2 because we had a lot of cautions in the early part of the race, and that was allowed Larson and most of those guys that elected not to pit to kind of maintain their tires for the moment. Then towards the end of stage 2, they came down pit road, and they had a nice battle with Tyler Reddick leaving the pits, so Larson was able to get in front of him and maintain his position on the track ahead of Reddick and some of those other guys that he was on the same strategy on. Now, they would restart a little deep in the pack at the start of the final stage, but they had fresher tires, so they were able to pick up a few cars one by one, and Larson got himself inside the top 10 just about the time that began the final sequence of green flag pit stops. Other cars came down pit road. Larson started to propel himself further and further up through the field, and then he came down and made his pit stop eventually and found himself in 6th place, about 6 to 7 seconds behind the race leader, Chris Buescher, at the time. But because of the fresh tires he had and because of a good car that he had, especially on those long runs, Larson was able to chip his way further through the field, and he closed the gap and got within the 2 leaders of Chris Buescher, Martin Truex Jr., for the win with 10 laps to go. Once Truex made the pass on Chris Buescher in turn 11, Larson followed through. He went up to 2nd, and then coming off of turn number 4 down to turn 7, Larson made the pass to the inside of Truex, took the lead, and he did not look back and picked up his 3rd win of the season. I mean, Larson over the last couple of years has become a very, very good road course racer. In the early days in the Cup Series, he was decent, but he wasn't really competing for race wins at the time. But again, ever since he came to Hendrick Motorsports, he's become more and more of a road course ace since he joined them, and he's just been very, very strong. And now with a 3rd win, and now the knowing that he's in the playoffs because of the waiver he's given, he's still going to be one of the main factors to try to win this championship. And a clinic like that, especially when we have the Roval come the playoffs, and if he's part of the round of 12 at the time, there's no doubt in my mind that Kyle Larson is going to be a threat to win that race and other road course races that we go to in this year. So a nice win yesterday for Kyle Larson and the 5 team. Number 2, rough day at the office for Joe Gibbs Racing. I mean, good Lord, 3 out of the 4 cars just had nothing but bad luck go their way. Only one driver from Joe Gibbs Racing was able to have a nice day, and that was Christopher Bell, finishing in 9th place. The other three, however, were not so fortunate. Starting on lap number 2 or 3 of the race, Denny Hamlin blows up, going up the hill into turn 1, bringing out the first caution of the day, and there was smoke coming out of both tailpipes, which I hadn't seen in a motor with this next-gen car since Kyle Busch's engine failure at Darlington in 2022. You know, the race that opened up the playoffs where a lot of the playoff drivers had chaos at the time, and Kyle Busch had that engine failure that took him out of a chance to win in what was his last year for Joe Gibbs Racing. You probably know what I'm talking about. But yeah, Hamlin out 2 laps into the race with smoke coming out of both tailpipes. And that just goes to show you that these next-gen engines also are pretty reliable for most of the races this year. Although last week there were some gremlins that hindered Christopher Bell's chances to win the race, and ultimately he fell back. He did get top 10, but the motor didn't completely go away like Denny Hamlin did yesterday. And then we go to Ty Gibbs. Just a couple laps later, he brought the second caution where he made contact with the new barrier wall at turn 11. It clipped it and damaged the right front wheel and sent him straight into the wall in turn 1, bringing out the caution and ending Gibbs' day. And this kind of hurts him because he still does not have a win yet this year. Now, he is 80-plus points above the cutoff line. But the last couple races, I feel like the 54 team has not been running up to par like where they were earlier in the year. They've kind of took a step back from where they've been performing and where they've been running. The 600, they had a good car, but other than that, most of the races, aside from the 600, they haven't been running well. And a finish like this, you're going to look back and think, if he doesn't make the playoffs somehow, you're going to look back on this race with that right front wheel damage and hitting the wall as one of the main reasons that you probably didn't make the playoffs. Now, obviously, we still have 10 races to go before we determine if this wreck really will hinder his chances to make the playoffs, but it's still something that is really going to sting for them after what, we expected Ty Gibbs to be in the top 10, at least competing for the win yesterday, but that was not the case with that incident. And then you go to Martin Truex Jr., who is the king of Sonoma, of the current drivers that we currently have in the field. He had a really good car. We felt like he was going to be one of the guys to compete for the win yesterday, and he was. But earlier in the race, he had a spin in the grass, and he had to recover from that. He fell deep in the pack. He got himself in a little bit of a incident in turn number 11 when a couple of cars started to go around. He got slight damage but still carried on, and it didn't really affect his car whatsoever, and he found himself up inside the top 5 when he gained his track position back, and it looked like for a moment he was going to be able to get the win. He was literally hounding Chris Buescher lap after lap after lap, trying to get the lead from him. He knew he had to go because Kyle Larson was on his way with those fresher tires. Truex eventually was able to get by Buescher with about 9 laps to go, but then just a couple seconds as they're going out of turn 4, Kyle Larson took the lead from him, and Truex was pretty much in position to settle for second place. But on the last lap, he was slowing down a little bit, and I could be thinking to myself, is he having the same problem that Denny Hamlin had? Is he losing his engine? But then Jamie Little came on the Fox telecast and said that Truex was told by James Small's crew chief to kind of flip the switch to try to save some fuel. And I'm like, well, the elevation going downhill on this racetrack, he'll probably be able to save some fuel and come away with a top 5 finish. Nope, that was not the case. As they're coming down out of turn 10 to turn 11, Truex ran out of gas, and instead of finishing in second place, he finished the last car on the lead lap in 27th. Talk about heartbreak. I mean, come on, man. Martin Truex Jr. definitely deserved to be in the top 5 yesterday, and if things had gone his way, he could have been the winner of the race if things had worked in his favor. But unfortunately, not enough gas to get him to the end. Well, he did get pushed to the end when everybody crossed the line. The safety truck pushed him across the line. You're not allowed to get assistance from another driver, but I guess the safety truck, that's an exception. But he ended up, instead of finishing in the top 5, he ended up finishing 27th, the last friendly lap. Just a rough day at the office for Joe Gibbs Racing. Number 3, tough end of the day for Kyle Busch. Another driver like Martin Truex Jr. that faced heartbreak yesterday at the end of the race was Kyle Busch. In the entire race, he didn't really make any mistakes, and we didn't talk about him too much. He was running quietly well and consistently inside the top 10, top 15 all the race yesterday. Then he found himself inside the top 5 because of the differing pit strategies from the earlier stages until we got to the final stage. He was able to get that track position and found himself inside the top 5, and it looked like he was going to come away with a nice top 5 finish. But on the last lap of the race, he was in a battle with Ross Chastain, who was on a little fresher tires than Kyle Busch was, going into turn number 4, the one-car Chastain apparently lost control, wheel hopped, and got on the inside of Kyle Busch and sent the 8 car spinning. So it took Kyle Busch from a top 5 to right outside the top 10 at the time. An absolute gut punch for a driver who has just had nothing but rough luck, not just in recent weeks, but this year in general. It has been a rough year for Kyle Busch. Probably a little bit rougher than his 2022 or 2020 season. I mean, it's just, I haven't seen Kyle Busch in the equipment that he's driving, and I know this is the second year, but I've never seen him this down as far as his performance. I mean, I know he's better than this. He's a 2-time Cup champion, for crying out loud. But it seems struggle. It's just absolutely mind-boggling. To make a long story short, he ended up coming home in the 12th position. Now, when I saw him on the checkered flag, he was slowly coming the line. It looked like he ran out of gas too. But because the caution flag was waving at the time, NASCAR went back and looked at the scoring to see when the moment yellow came out, will freeze the field under caution. And Kyle Busch at the time, at the moment the yellow lights came on, he was in 12th place instead of 17th place where he originally came across the line after he was slow coming to the line. So he was rewarded with a 12th place finish, which isn't completely terrible, but it could have been a lot better if he finished inside the top 5. But I mean, look, Chastain made a mistake on the last lap. Was it intentional? No. Did he make a mistake, unfortunately? Yes. And that mistake cost Kyle Busch a solid finish. Now, I don't know if that incident never happened. Would Kyle Busch have still been able to finish inside the top 5 or even the top 10 because he was low on gas coming to the end of that race? I don't know. But at some point in time, this team and Kyle have got to get out of this slump and got to get back to running up at the front where they're accustomed to being and where they should be running. But right now, they're not doing it. They've got to find the silver lining that can get them out of this slump and get them back up at the front. But what was supposed to have been a promising day for Kyle Busch yesterday ends up on heartbreak on the last lap. Number 4, solid day for a lot of our road course aces in Michael McDowell, Chris Buescher, and Chase Elliott. Let's kick it off with Michael McDowell. Of course, we all know that next year he will not be returning to Front Row Motorsports. He'll be shifting to Spire Motorsports. But yesterday we felt like it was an opportunity for a guy who has had great road course experience and won last year's Indianapolis road course race that he could be a factor for the win yesterday. Well, things did not get off to the best start for Michael McDowell, like I've mentioned for a few other guys. He was caught up in one of the early incidents in Turn 8A, where he went off course with Austin Cindric and Noah Gragson. Damaged the right front a little bit. He still kept it going, but I felt like that aerodynamic disadvantage and all the other drivers, going back and forth. Who knows where he could have finished yesterday, despite the incident. But they, like many others, were able to gain their track position at the start of the final stage, and he found himself inside the top 10 and remained in there, and then found himself inside the top 5 within the final 10 laps in the race. And he was beginning to get closer and closer to those top 3 that were battling for the win towards the last laps of this race. I don't think he was going to get Kyle Larson, but I knew for sure he was going to get Chris Buescher, which he did. And then, of course, when Truex ran out of gas on the last lap, McDowell vaulted over him, and he found himself in second place. A great result for him, but based on his points position right now, he is going to have to win one of these next 10 races to find himself in the playoffs this year like he did last year. Can it happen? Sure. I mean, the road course, there's plenty of them coming up before we get ready for the regular season finale at Darlington. There's, of course, Daytona. There's always some possibilities for Michael McDowell to win to get in, but they're limited, and he's running out of time. So if you want to make one last chance at getting a win and getting yourself into the playoffs in your last go ride with Front Row Motorsports, Michael, gonna have to make something happen in one of these road courses or Daytona, but a good result nonetheless for him yesterday, considering after what happened at the start of the race. Then we go to Chris Buescher. So much heartbreak for him this year. This guy is this is the 3rd race this year that he's been very close to winning. Of course, he nearly won Kansas. We thought he won that race until NASCAR said, nope, Kyle Larson beat you by 1/1000th of a second. Then we go to Darlington, a track where he was literally in position to win late until the battle with Tyler Reddick. They both got up into the wall in turn 4, squeezed them both up there as Reddick made a dive bomb pass, slid up the track, and got into Buescher, taking them both out of a chance to win. And Brad Keselowski went on to win that race, and Buescher was not happy with Reddick, saying, you've got a sticker on your car. I don't. So, and yesterday looked like for a moment he was going to be able to do it. I mean, Buescher finished in the top 10 in every position on a road course track that he's competed at, except for first place. And he almost had it yesterday, battling it out late in the race with Martin Truex Jr. He had that track position. He won stage 2. It certainly looked like it was going to be his moment. But when he and Truex continued to keep battling it out further and further towards the end of that race, and the lap times were beginning to fall off because of the older tires he had, and hard charging Larson towards the very end, he got by both of them, and Buescher had to settle for a third place result. Now, it's a great result for him, but he's still searching for that win. Could it happen in any of these next 10 races? Absolutely, but I just need to see, we need the Chris Buescher that we saw last summer that was absolutely on rails, running up front, finishing well, and got those wins that got him into the playoffs. We need that Chris Buescher back. I know they're getting close to it. They have a chance to win one of these races, but they got to seal the deal. It's only a matter of time before Buescher can get himself to victory lane. But despite all that, a third place yesterday is nothing to sneeze about. And then we go to the road course king himself, Chase Elliott. Now, Sonoma has not really been his best road course track out of all the road course tracks we go to. It's really been his Achilles heel. But I think yesterday with the repave and the way that they've been really consistent as a team this year, yesterday was one of their better performances since the 2021 race where he finished runner-up to Larson. Yesterday, he qualified in the top 5, right in there a lot of the race, got some stage points in stage 1. Then he was able to pit with a lot of those other guys that had not yet pitted towards the end of stage 2. Found himself deep in the pack, but with those fresher tires to start the final stage, he worked his way up inside the top 15. Then pit stops during green flag happened. He was able to stay out front and lead a couple laps. Then he came down pit road, made his stop, and went back out on the track. Now, he was a couple seconds behind Kyle Larson, so there was no way he was going to be able to catch him, but top 10 was definitely in the cards for him, and it looked like he was going to finish 7th at the end of that race. But then, of course, all that last lap chaos with the 1 and the 8 getting together, the 19 running out of gas, and Elliott actually on the last corner in turn 11 got into the back of Chastain, just a little bit of a tap to move him out of the way and get that 4th place result. Well, if Truex didn't run out of gas, Elliott got by Chastain, he would have finished in 5th place. But with Truex running out of gas, a 4th place for number 9. And again, they've been very consistent this year. They are the only driver to have an average finish of above 10th place this season. He has yet to finish outside the top 20 this year. Are they as dominant right now as their teammate Larson is, or even William Byron has been? Not really, but again, he has the win at Texas, and he has, again, been able to keep his car clean at the finish of every race this season. You can't deny that. That's really good under the radar consistency from the 9 team. They're going to get some more wins, and hopefully he can break this drought of not being able to win in a road course. He hasn't won in a road course since we debuted this next-gen car at COTA in 2022. He has yet to win with this next-gen car in a road course, but I've got a feeling he's going to be knocking on the door soon and getting another victory at a road course. But a great run by all road course regulars yesterday in McDowell, Buescher, and Elliott. And number 5, chaos at Sonoma. Yesterday was one of the most chaotic Sonoma races that I can remember in a long, long time. I mean, of course, one of the things I think contributed to this race yesterday with all the chaos we had, particularly the start of the race and all those cautions, was the brand new surface. For the last couple of years, the last 20 years really in general, Sonoma has been a worn out racetrack where it's been all about managing your tires and, being able to stretch it further than a lot of other guys and having a good race car. But this time we have a new surface on the track. We had a repave during the off season. And I gotta say, the surface looked really good. And if you watch on TV, the cars are going a lot faster, about 3 seconds quicker than in the past because of the new surface played a factor with that. But what that surface also did was contribute to a lot of guys going hard, aggressive the entire time on restarts because we kept having them because everybody kept having problems. Of course, I mentioned the Hamlin and Gibbs cautions early on in the race, but then we had a couple cars tangle in turn 8A the first time when Joey Logano, Chase Briscoe, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Harrison Burton, and others tangled at the top of the hill at turn 8A, and that brought out another caution. Then we had a few more caution incidents with guys losing control on the track, like Austin Cindric, last week's winner from Gateway, spun and went around. A lot of other guys had that mess at turn 11 where Josh Berry got tapped from behind by John Hunter Nemechek, it looked like, and he got into the inside wall at turn 11 and then carried him right out into the pack, collecting Christopher Bell, William Byron, Truex, as I mentioned, even though he got away with minimal damage. Cam Waters making his debut with the RFK number 60 car. A lot of cars were torn up in that incident. Some of them were able to continue on, but others were kind of running wounded the rest of the race. And then, as I mentioned, Michael McDowell's incident in this turn 8A, it happened the next caution later with him and Cindric and Gregson going off course and into the barriers. All three continued, with McDowell, of course, getting the better finish, but there was quite a lot of chaos yesterday. I mean, I know the end of the 2021 race was fairly chaotic, but I can't remember an entire Sonoma race where at the beginning it was nothing but caution, restart, caution, restart, caution, restart. It was absolutely crazy out there. But then we got into the final stage and everything was just peace and quiet except for the shenanigans, or not shenanigans, the dramatic moments on the last lap of the race with those guys running out of gas and spinning and everything. The final stage was fairly clean with long green flag runs, as we normally could see here at Sonoma. Guys stretching it out with the different tire strategies. Some guys pitting a little bit later, like Larson and Elliott, were able to make the most of it, of course, with the 5-car winning the race. But I definitely think that the new service at Sonoma provided for an entertaining race. I mean, the last couple of years, Sonoma had not really been that fun. But this time around, this Sonoma race, definitely a very interesting one. I mean, one of the most entertaining Sonoma races that I can remember since 2014, because that one was entertaining. And you can even argue the end of the 2016 race with Tony Stewart getting Denny Hamlin on the last lap in turn 11 was very entertaining as well. But, this race was definitely a lot of fun to watch. I had a blast, and I think the fans definitely got their money's worth with all the side-by-side battles. I mean, you could pass as well on this track. I mean, the last lap, a few laps of the race with the battle for the win with the 5, the 17, the 19 was definitely a lot of fun, and I was just on the edge of my seat the entire time. So a good race for Sonoma, even with a lot of chaos on a new service. It was certainly a fun race to watch. And yesterday was also the final race of the season for NASCAR on Fox for the Cup Series. Of course, the Fox coverage of the year has officially concluded, and I want to thank Mike Joy, Kevin Harvick, and Clint Boyer for their amazing commentary throughout the entire season, from the start of the year at the LA Coliseum to the Daytona 500 to all the tracks we've gone to the Checkers this weekend at Sonoma. Of course, we all know Mike Joy is one of the greatest NASCAR announcers that we have, and we're still blessed to have him with us and calling these races and, narrating everything that he sees. I mean, he's just a big part of the sport, somebody that I look up to, somebody that inspires me to try to pursue, trying to be a little bit in where he works at on television. He's just so much fun to listen to and very insightful. And he did a really good job this year. I felt like there was a lot more excitement and energy in his voice at a lot of these races this year, especially some of the finishes that we had. They were definitely entertaining. And of course, Kevin Harvick, his first year with NASCAR on Fox in the broadcast booth, I thought he did a stellar job, brought great insight as well, and not afraid to speak his mind, not afraid to call people out if they make a mistake, calling them a bonehead or something like that. He's not afraid to speak his mind, especially on his Happy Hour podcast, which I think has also helped him, become a successful broadcaster so far in his first year. So I enjoyed listening to Kevin Harvick this year. And then, of course, Clint Boyer. He's funny as always, and he's energetic, but he also does bring some good insight to the races as well. I mean, he's definitely a blast, and especially the pre-race segments with the tailgate, venues that he goes out to every single race that we go to. Definitely is a lot of fun, and they did a great job, and everybody else in the Fox crew, Larry McReynolds, Shannon Spake, Jamie McMurray, Michael Waltrip, Chris Myers, Jamie Little, Regan Smith, and Josh Sims. Everybody did a really good job this year, and it's going to suck not having them for the rest of the year, but I thank them for all they did, and looking forward to seeing everybody back with NASCAR on Fox to kick off another season next year in 2025. So, nice job by NASCAR on Fox, and we thank them all for a great 2024 portion of their season. Now it is time for NBC Sports to return, as next weekend, Rick Allen, Jeff Burton, and Steve Letarte and the NBC crew return to take us from the green flag of next weekend's race all the way to the Checkers in Phoenix, where we will crown a champion. And next weekend, for the first time ever, the NASCAR Cup Series will make its inaugural debut at Iowa Speedway. We've seen the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series run there before, but we've never seen the Cup Series. And this race, of course, is the main one-year holding place for California Speedway, which is still in the construction process of converting that track into a 3/4 mile venue. Iowa Speedway is definitely been a fairly interesting track over the years with tire fall off and a lot of cars slipping and sliding in the Xfinity Series and Truck Series, though we haven't been there in a while. But now NASCAR is back at Iowa, and I'm very excited to see what we have next weekend. I mean, of course, there are Cup drivers in the field that have been at Iowa before through the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series. Although it's been a couple years for some of those guys like Elliott, Kyle Busch, and Brad Keselowski, and even Joey Logano too. It's been a while since they've been there. It may take a while for them to get adjusted to the track, unlike some of the guys that we have in the Cup Series that have been there in prior years in Xfinity. But I think it's going to be a very interesting race. And parts of the track have been also repaved and reconfigured, so we'll see what that will do for the racing. But I'm very excited to see what will happen next week. So who will win the inaugural Iowa Cup race? I don't know. We're going to have to find out for ourselves. But I hope you all have a wonderful week. And also quickly ahead, again, I want to thank NASCAR on Fox for a great portion of their 2024 season broadcasting. You guys did a great job. No, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Subscribe, like, and congrats once again to Kyle Larson and the 5 team on their win at Sonoma yesterday. Have a great week, everybody. Let's go racing!